You based your book on the 1976 convention speech. He just lost the nomination to Gerald Ford, and he ad-libbed that speech. Tell us about it.
Well, it was interesting because if you ever see video of that, Pat, the thing is you look at the glassed-in room that we were all in. We all left during the president's speech, Gerald Ford's speech, because we knew the convention was going to be over. There'd be a rush to get to the hotel. So we all left while that was going on, knowing my father would never be asked to come speak after the President of the United States of America. So we all went back to the hotel and were sitting having a glass of wine when the president looked up to the booth and said, "Ron, come on down and say a few words and bring your lovely wife, Nancy." And Dad was startled by it because he didn't expect that to happen. And then he didn't know what to say. And Nancy said, "Don't worry, you'll think of something." And went down and probably gave one of the great speeches of his life. But what he talked about, other than bold colors, Pat, was he talked about being asked to write a letter to be put into a time capsule to be opened on the 300th birthday of the United States of America. And he talked about the daunting task of having to write to a people who would know everything about us that we would know nothing of. And he thought, do I write about the freedoms we have today, knowing if we do not make the right decisions, they may not even have the right to open the time capsule to read the letter I have written?
Whether they have the freedoms that we have known up until now will depend on what we do here.
And I think about that then in '76 and what we're going through today. And every year we seem to lose more and more of our freedoms. We're only a third of the way through that letter. And I worry that when we get to the end of it, they may not have those freedoms unless we get engaged.
We've got a president now whose foreign policy seems to be an antithesis of your father. You want to talk about the foreign policy of Ronald Reagan?
Well, the foreign policy of Ronald Reagan was very simply, we win, they lose. And he stood very strong with that. But one thing about Ronald Reagan is he uplifted America. Ronald Reagan was the Boy Scout in all of us. Ronald Reagan, we felt, Maureen and I did, he was the kid going for his Eagle Scout badge by running for president of the United States. He was so excited about the world and the country he lived in. And Ronald Reagan ran for president, so I talk about in the book, because he wanted to be the first one to say niet, to say no, to a Secretary General of the Soviet Union who wanted us to give up something to get along with them. He stood strong in Reykjavik, and what ended the Cold War by standing strong in Reykjavik was given up by Barack Obama first days in.
Well, you know that tremendous line that he had in that speech, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down that wall. It resonated throughout Eastern Europe and all over Germany, but the State Department killed that. They didn't want it. He put it in all by himself, didn't he?
Oh, yeah, actually writing with, working with his writer, Peter Robinson, whatever. But, on June 2nd of 1987, there's a memo written from the National Security Council to Colin Powell. And it says this, Colin, we've read the speech. At best, it is mediocre. It is certainly a missed opportunity. Please see attached for changes. And when you go to the next page to changes, that whole paragraph where he says, Mr. Gorbachev, come to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, come here, open this gate, tear down this wall, is all X'd out and initialed by those members of the National Security Council. There would be 8 more memos between June 2nd of '87 and June 12th when my dad gave that speech of all the different areas of my father's government, every one of them saying the same thing, take that out. But Ronald Reagan knew it was his chance. He told Bobby Kennedy to tell his brother to do it back in the 1960s. The right thing to do was say, tear down this wall. He did, and the rest is history.
If you seek liberalization, come here to this gate. Mr. Gorbachev, open this gate.
Was he fighting all the time, the establishment? Were they always out to get him?
I mean, they still are. I mean, not him, but, you know the State Department,
Sure.
Those boys over there. I mean, goodness gracious, they got their own deal going over there. And my dad understood this, and my dad knew that. And, he was the president of the United States, and he needed to do the right thing. Remember, in Reykjavik, they all wanted him to sign on. They all wanted him to give up SDI in Reykjavik so that they could have an agreement with Mikhail Gorbachev to start agreement. And my father said, not going to happen, no, and walked away from Reykjavik. And it truly was the niet, if you will, heard around the world, because that is the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union and the beginning of that wall coming down.
What do you think in today's world, if we put some of his principles into play, which ones would you say should be uppermost in the management of this nation?
Yeah, I think probably uppermost in the management of this nation, what goes on is understand there's somebody more powerful than you in charge. Ronald Reagan understood that, and it was brought home to roost right after he got shot, March of 1981. And it's interesting that, in fact, in that same time frame, Pope John Paul is shot. And I talk about in the book the fact, you know, there's two shots heard around the world, but what it two, it bound two people together. And it bound them together in something other than, you know, being the leaders of their respective areas of the world, the Vatican and the United States of America. When they got together, both of them being shot, both of them, their lives being saved. My father believing his life being saved for a higher purpose. And I say in the book that here's two people that not only could recite the Lord's Prayer, and you'll relate to this, Pat, they could not only recite the Lord's Prayer, they actually lived the Lord's Prayer. They forgave. Yeah. And that's the first thing they did before they got out of the hospital room. And things were blessed by that. So they knew there was a higher power. Yeah. And the other thing is they both looked for the good in people. Today, we don't look for the good. We get ratings by looking for the bad. And Ronald Reagan and Pope John Paul looked for the good in people. Even over my dad's gravesite, it talks about the goodness of people. Look for that goodness. And when you find it, go from there forward, not backwards.
This is a terrific book. Michael Reagan, The Reagan Revolution, How Ronald Reagan's Principles Can Restore America's Greatness, and we sure do need it. Well, we thank you, Michael, for being with us. We thank you for the stand you've taken and for this terrific book. I hope it does very well all across America. We need it.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to talk to you again. See you.
All right. Bye-bye.